Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. I was talking with one of our private bankers yesterday, I guess it was, and he was mentioning something to me that made me think of a really important principle that I try to teach my staff. I try to teach my friends and family around me, but it's also important for clients. And I think it's something that people from certain parts of the world maybe kind of have it conditioned into them growing up, and people in other parts of the world don't have at all. And it's just, almost maybe contrary to the culture. So I wanted to discuss a little bit of a cultural difference and the way that you should probably behave regardless. I know there's the expression of when in Rome, do as the Romans do. But that being said, this is just a useful behavior in business and in life in general. So we're going to talk today about this topic. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell if you'd like help with the topics we deal with here, which is international tax optimization, forming companies, opening bank accounts, getting residencies and citizenships around the world. Please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. Or you can send a message through our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. All right. So this thing is a basic concept, which is almost everything in life is negotiable, okay? So let's talk about a few really specific areas that I think this comes into play. Steve Jobs famously said that you go through life and you live in a world with all these different rules. And you, at some point, will realize that those rules were made up by other people who are no smarter than you, and you can make your own rules. And I really think this is a worthwhile position to be in. Unfortunately, in the world we're in today, a lot of how there are constraints being put into place mean that it's more and more necessary in order to get things done and to be effective, not to follow the conventional path. Now, there's certain parts of the world where something like going and negotiating what you want is considered negative, or it's just sort of fair to begin with. So for example, I'm from Canada, and if you walk into someplace like Walmart or Canadian Tire, the instinct is, well, the price is the price, you're not going to negotiate on it, etc., which is quite different than going to the Grand Bazaar in Turkey or going to a night market in Thailand, where everything is negotiable and you better negotiate on it or you're going to get ripped off really badly. It's just part of the whole process. And you've got some spectrum of difference in different parts of the world. For example, if you go into a used car dealership, or most car dealerships in the West, I would say there's a negotiation process, minimal on real estate, but some on real estate for sure. And, again, there's a bit of a spectrum. But what is interesting, I had a business years ago where we were buying, health equipment from China, importing it and selling it around Canada and the US. And I remember one of the first sales that we ever did, we had, I think we sold 18 units that weekend or whatever, and only one person negotiated, and it was ironically the person driving the Porsche Cayenne, and all the other people were not. You'd kind of think, well, hang on, isn't this the one guy who can afford it? And turned out, maybe there's a reason that he can afford it. But why do I bring this up? Because there's a recent experience that we were discussing where someone got an offer from a bank and they ended up going with another bank. Now, you're going to choose to go with whoever you choose to go with in any given situation. That's perfectly fine. However, it's worth noting that the first bank was very willing to negotiate on the offer that they made. And so I think in general, when somebody asks something of you, when somebody offers something to you, when they deny you, etc., it's worth it to realize that that's typically a starting point for some kind of negotiation. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get a better terms or always be able to get whatever you'd like, etc. But interestingly, since I mentioned the retail experience, for those of you who aren't familiar, in Canada, there's a massive box store called Canadian Tire. So it's a franchise throughout the country, and it's sort of like the Walmart or Home Depot of kind of like garden stuff, right? So you have lawnmowers and all this. And interestingly, I actually had an experience of successfully negotiating down pricing on, I think it was a lawnmower or something I was buying at the time. And I would have never thought that was the case, right? I would think, what are you talking about? This is a big chain. They set their prices. The price is the price. And at the time we had, somebody there, supervisor or whatever, and looked at it and said, I think I saw that this was cheaper like a week ago. Can we get the old price? And they're like, yeah, here, take this to them and they'll give it to you. So it just goes to show that even in places where you don't think it's the case, it is. And I think it's always worth it to just ask the question of, is there a better way? Is there another way? Is there something? Like, what's the worst that will happen? Somebody will say, nope. And you're like, okay, great. Some relatives of mine recently sold part of their business. And so they were asking me for advice in the process. And one of the first things that I told them was, ask for a higher price. And they're like, well, they were all worried that maybe they'll lose the deal. And I'm like, look, the worst that will happen is they'll say no. That's it. And they've already made you this offer. So you can always go back to this offer. But if you ask and they say yes, then maybe you just made some extra money. And it turned out they did. They took the advice, they asked, and they did get a higher price. It was, an increase of, 5, 10%, whatever the number happened to be. And so, great. You're in a much better situation if that's you. So I just wanted to remind you that, people in certain parts of the world, they're conditioned to ask for a better deal all the time. Sometimes if you think about dealing with people culturally, in my experience when I deal with people from, say, China, you almost need to come in high, knowing that they're going to want a good deal, and you have to expect to bring the price down. This is quite different than if you're dealing with people in other areas. So there is some cultural awareness to understanding who you're dealing with around the world and addressing it accordingly. But just in general, it is a good practice to get into to, ask what other options are available, how else might something work, etc. So I hope that helps. I hope it gives just kind of a little reminder. Probably a lot of you are very familiar with it already, but I think it's always worth keeping in mind. If you have questions, put them in the comments below. Would love to hear your feedback, and I will see you on the next video.